The morning after our anniversary, my wife asked, "Were you talking to me or my sister last night?" My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips as Melissa stood in our kitchen doorway, arms crossed in that specific way that meant this wasn't a casual question. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying or hadn't slept. "What do you mean?" I asked, though my stomach had already dropped. She moved to the counter, pouring coffee with shaking hands. "Last night, after everyone left, in the garage, you were with someone for almost an hour, having an intense conversation." She turned to face me. Was it me, or was it Rachel? The way she said her sister's name, with that slight tremor, told me she'd already decided what the answer might be. The anniversary party had been perfect, or so I'd thought. 15 years of marriage celebrated with friends and family in our backyard. Rachel had flown in from Seattle as a surprise, the first time the twins had been together in almost a year. But now, watching Melissa's face crumble as she waited for my answer, I realized something had gone terribly wrong. "Mel, I talked to both of you last night," I said carefully, trying to remember every conversation through the wine haze. "But the garage, specifically the garage," she pressed. "Someone was in there with you. I heard voices, whispers. Someone was crying." My mind raced through the evening. There had been wine, champagne for the toast, then more wine. The garage, though. Why would I have been in the garage? And who had been crying? "You said things," Melissa continued, her voice breaking. "I heard you say, 'I can't keep doing this, and she doesn't have to know.' I heard you say, 'I think about it every day.'" Each phrase hit like a physical blow because I had said those things, but the context was gone, lost in the alcohol fog. "And then," she paused, gathering courage, "I heard you say, 'I love you more than you know.'" Rachel appeared in the doorway behind her sister, looking worse than I'd ever seen her. Her makeup was smeared, her dress from last night wrinkled, and she was holding her phone like a weapon. "We need to talk," she said, but she was looking at Melissa, not me. "About what Daniel told you, about what he's been telling me." The room suddenly felt too small. "I haven't been telling you anything," I protested, but Rachel held up her phone, showing a text conversation. My name at the top, messages I didn't remember sending. "Meet me after everyone's asleep. We need to discuss what happens next. Don't let Melissa see this." "Those aren't from me," I said immediately, grabbing my own phone. But there they were in my sent messages, timestamps from last night when everything was blurry. "I don't remember sending these." It sounded pathetic even to my own ears. Melissa laughed bitterly. "You don't remember a lot of things lately. Like the doctor's appointment last week you said was a work meeting, or the 3 times you've met Rachel for coffee when you told me you were at the gym." My blood went cold. She'd been tracking my lies, but misunderstanding their purpose entirely. "You've been monitoring me?" I asked, deflecting because I couldn't explain yet. "Not like this." "I've been noticing things," Melissa corrected. "How you close your laptop when I walk in, how you take calls in the garage, how you and Rachel stop talking when I enter a room." She looked between her sister and me. "I'm not stupid. I know what an affair looks like." Rachel's face went pale. "Melissa, no. God, no. We would never," but her denial sounded hollow when she couldn't explain the texts, the meetings, the secrets. The truth was, sitting like lead in my stomach, but I couldn't say it. Not yet. Not until I talked to Dr. Pearson about the best way to break this news. "Can we sit down?" I asked, trying to buy time. "All 3 of us. Let me explain everything." Melissa shook her head. "I found the credit card statement, the one you hid in your car, $3,000 at that specialty jewelry store downtown. Were you buying her gifts? Or was that for someone else entirely?" "The necklace." Of course she'd found the receipt for the necklace, the one with the medical alert engraving hidden beneath decorative plating. "That's not what you think," I started, but Melissa cut me off. "And the hotel charge from 2 weeks ago? The Fairmont? Middle of the day? Room service for 2? That had been the consultation with the specialist from Johns Hopkins, but the way it looked on paper was damning. Rachel had been there, but not for the reason Melissa suspected. We'd spent 3 hours discussing treatment options, experimental trials, things we couldn't burden Melissa with yet. "You 2 disappeared together at the party last night," Melissa continued. "For over an hour. Dad saw you leave together." "We were in the garage," Rachel admitted quietly. "But Melissa, it's not." She stopped, looking at me desperately. I shook my head slightly. "Not yet. Not like this." But Melissa saw the exchange, the silent communication between her husband and sister, and her face hardened. "How long?" she asked, her voice deadly quiet. "How long have you been sleeping with my sister?" The accusation hung in the air like poison. Neither Rachel nor I could deny we'd been keeping secrets, meeting privately, sharing something intimate that excluded Melissa. "We're not sleeping together," I said firmly, but Melissa was already pulling up more evidence on her phone. Screenshots of Rachel's Instagram showing her wearing a scarf I'd given her, one Melissa had never seen. Credit card charges from restaurants where Rachel and I had met. A parking receipt from the medical center dated 3 weeks ago when I'd supposedly been at a conference. All of it painted a picture of deception, just not the kind she imagined. The conference in Chicago, Melissa said slowly. Rachel was there too. Her conference was in Portland, but she was in Chicago. She was right. Rachel had flown to Chicago to meet with Dr. Kumar, the specialist at Northwestern Memorial. I'd introduced them, sat through the consultation, held Rachel's hand when she heard the prognosis. But to Melissa, it looked like a romantic rendezvous. You want to know what we discussed in the garage? I asked, suddenly exhausted by the weight of keeping this secret. Fine, but you're not going to like it. Melissa's chin lifted defiantly. I already don't like it, but Rachel grabbed my arm, squeezing hard enough to hurt. Don't, she whispered. Not yet, please. Don't what? Melissa demanded. Don't tell me you're in love with my sister. Don't tell me our marriage is over. What exactly shouldn't he tell me, Rachel? The pain in her voice was unbearable because the truth would hurt her differently, but just as deeply. The garage conversation was about you, I said carefully. Everything we've been doing has been about you. Melissa laughed harshly. Oh, so you're having an affair for my benefit? How thoughtful. But I could see the confusion starting to creep in, the pieces not quite fitting her narrative. Rachel's phone rang, and she looked at the screen with panic. It's Dr. Pearson, she said to me, forgetting to hide the name. Should I answer? Melissa's eyes narrowed. Who's Dr. Pearson? Your couple's therapist? The assumption would have been funny if everything wasn't so tragic. Rachel answered the phone, walking into the hallway, but we could still hear her. Yes, we're going to tell her today. No, she doesn't know yet. The party was last night. We wanted her to have one more perfect memory. One more perfect memory? Melissa repeated, her anger morphing into something else, something closer to fear. What does that mean? I sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly feeling every sleepless night from the past month. Mel, please sit down. Something in my voice must have broken through because she sat, though she kept the table between us like a shield. 2 months ago you had that persistent headache, I began. The one that wouldn't go away. You went to urgent care, and they said it was just stress. What does that have to do with anything? She asked, but I could see her starting to connect dots. They did a scan, I continued. A routine scan that showed something. You asked me to call for the results while you were at work. Remember? You were in that big meeting. Her face was changing, the anger melting into confusion. They said everything was fine. You said everything was fine. I looked at my hands. I lied. The scan showed an anomaly. They wanted you to come in immediately for more tests. The work trips, Rachel said from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Daniel took you to the appointments while telling you I was traveling. We've been tag teaming so you wouldn't suspect. Melissa looked between us, her world tilting. What appointments? What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, opening the folder I'd labeled Work Docs, but was actually full of medical information, test results, scan images, consultation notes. I slid it across to her, watching her face as she realized what she was looking at. This is a brain scan, she said slowly, with my name on it. Her finger traced the area circled in red, the tumor that had been growing silently, asymptomatically, until that headache. It's treatable, I said quickly. That's what all the meetings have been about. Rachel found a specialist in Paris, Dr. Laurent, who's had incredible success with this specific type. The jewelry store charge was for a medical alert necklace. The hotel was for meeting with the specialist from Johns Hopkins who was consulting on your case. Melissa's hands were shaking as she scrolled through the images. The experimental trial in Paris starts in 3 weeks, Rachel said softly. We've been arranging everything. The apartment rental, the medical visa, the insurance appeals. Daniel's been coordinating with your work for a leave of absence without telling you. The garage conversation suddenly made sense in context. I can't keep doing this, lying to my wife. She doesn't have to know until after the party. I think about it every day, losing her. I love you more than you know, directed at Melissa herself when she'd briefly come into the garage before leaving again. You've known for 2 months? Melissa's voice was small, lost. You've been carrying this for 2 months? I reached for her hand, and this time she let me take it. We wanted to have all the answers before we told you. The success rates, the treatment plan, everything arranged so you could focus on getting better. She looked at Rachel. And you? You've been helping? Rachel nodded, wiping her eyes. You're my sister, my twin. Did you think I wouldn't drop everything? The text messages suddenly needed explaining. The texts about meeting after everyone was asleep, those were about the video consultation with Dr. Laurent. It was the only time he could meet, with the time difference. I showed her my phone calendar, the 2 a.m. appointment clearly marked. We did it in the garage so we wouldn't wake you. Melissa was crying now, but it was different from before. I thought you were having an affair. I thought I was losing you to her. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. She was afraid of losing me when we were afraid of losing her. The Chicago conference, she said, pieces falling into place. That was medical too? Rachel nodded. The tumor board at Northwestern. They presented your case to a panel of specialists. Daniel wanted family there, and I'm your medical proxy if he can't make decisions. The legal documents I'd had Rachel sign, another secret meeting Melissa had probably cataloged as evidence of an affair. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Melissa asked, though she was already softening, the reality of her situation starting to sink in. Because you would have spiraled, I said gently. You would have gone down every internet rabbit hole, convinced yourself you were dying. We wanted to be able to say, you have this, but here's exactly how we're going to fix it. It was true. Melissa was a catastrophizer, a worrier who would have spent 2 months in panic. The success rate with Dr. Laurent is 92%, Rachel added. Full recovery, no deficits. But the treatment is aggressive. 6 weeks in Paris, then monitoring for a year. Melissa stood up suddenly, walking to the window. We watched her process everything, the fear of betrayal transforming into fear of something else entirely. Am I dying? She asked without turning around. No, I said firmly. Not if we do this. The tumor is benign but growing. If we remove it now, you'll be fine. If we wait, it becomes complicated. She turned to look at us, her face streaked with tears. Paris? We nodded. All 3 of us, Rachel said. I'm taking a leave from work. Daniel's already arranged everything with his company. The crying in the garage, Melissa said suddenly. Who was crying? I hesitated, then admitted, I was. Rachel was comforting me. I've been having panic attacks about losing you. Last night, seeing you so happy, so beautiful, knowing what was coming, I broke down. The admission hung between us, the reversal of her assumptions complete. She'd thought I was in love with Rachel when I'd been terrified of losing the love of my life. Show me everything, Melissa said, sitting back down with new determination. Every report, every consultation note, everything you've been hiding. For the next 3 hours, we went through it all. The initial scan, the second opinion, the third. The insurance battles Rachel had fought, winning appeals through sheer determination. The apartment in Paris, walking distance from the clinic. The experimental treatment that wasn't available in the US yet, but had shown remarkable success in Europe. You liquidated your retirement account, Melissa said to me, seeing the bank statements. And you, she looked at Rachel. You sold your car. We'd both made sacrifices to afford the treatment without burdening Melissa with financial worry on top of everything else. We're family, Rachel said simply. This is what family does. The garage conversation took on new meaning as Melissa remembered more clearly. She had come in briefly, heard me say, I love you more than you know, and left, assuming I was talking to Rachel. But Rachel had stepped out moments before, and I'd been alone, practicing what I wanted to say to Melissa when we finally told her. The timestamp on the texts, Melissa said, pulling up her phone. They don't match when you were actually in the garage. She was right. The messages had been sent earlier about the video call, but her phone had delayed receiving them due to the poor cell service in our house. Another misunderstanding layered on top of everything else. I'm scared, she admitted finally, the anger completely gone now. I know, I said, moving to sit beside her. We are too, but we're going to get through this together. Rachel joined us, and for the first time in 2 months, we were all on the same side of the secret. Dr. Laurent wants to start treatment in 2 weeks, Rachel said. We have flights booked, everything arranged. Melissa looked at the itinerary, the medical schedule, the apartment photos. You two did all this? While I was suspecting an affair? The guilt on her face was overwhelming. We should have told you sooner, I admitted, but we wanted to protect you from the fear as long as possible. The specialist jewelry store, Melissa said suddenly, remembering. Can I see it? The necklace? I retrieved it from my car where I'd hidden it, the beautiful piece that looked like designer jewelry, but contained her medical information. I was going to give it to you before we left for Paris, I explained, so you'd have it for the treatment. She put it on immediately, the weight of it somehow comforting now that she knew its purpose. Your father knows, Rachel admitted. We had to tell someone in case of emergency. He's been helping with the insurance paperwork. Melissa's eyes widened. That's why he kept asking if I was feeling okay. That's why he looked so sad last night. All the strange behaviors from the past 2 months suddenly made sense through this new lens. The hushed conversations, the worried looks, the secret meetings, all of it born from love, not betrayal. The success rate is really 92%? Melissa asked, needing reassurance. We showed her the studies, the testimonials from former patients, the video messages from people who'd had the same procedure. Higher if we catch it early, which we have, Rachel confirmed. Dr. Laurent is the best in the world for this specific type. Melissa pulled us both into a hug, the 3 of us crying for different reasons than we had been an hour ago. I'm sorry I thought you were cheating, she whispered to me. I'm sorry I gave you reason to think it, I whispered back. The truth was, we had been having an affair of sorts, just not a romantic one. An affair of hidden love, of protective deception, of carrying unbearable weight to spare someone else from carrying it. We leave for Paris in 2 weeks, Rachel said, already shifting into planning mode. We need to pack, Arrange for the house? Tell work the real reason? No, Melissa said suddenly. We both looked at her in alarm. No, can we have one more week of normal? Before everything changes? Before I become a patient? We understood. One more week of ordinary life before the battle began. One more week where cancer didn't define every conversation and decision. We can do that, I agreed, though it would be hard to pretend nothing had changed. That night, the three of us stayed up late planning not the medical journey, but the Paris adventure parts. The cafes we'd visit between treatments, the museums for recovery days, the parks for gentle walks. We transformed the medical trip into something that felt less like a crisis and more like an extended family vacation with a really important purpose. The garage, Melissa said suddenly around midnight. Why were you two specifically in the garage? Rachel laughed for the first time all day. Your husband had a complete meltdown about losing you and didn't want anyone at the party to see. I found him stress organizing your toolbox and crying. Very masculine, very discreet. I threw a pillow at her, but we were all laughing now, the tension finally breaking. I alphabetized the screwdrivers, I admitted, by brand and then by size. It was absurd, but it had been the only thing I could control in that moment. You know what the ironic part is? Melissa said, getting philosophical as exhaustion set in. I was so convinced you two were betraying me. I never noticed you were actually protecting me. I was looking for deception in all the wrong places. She was right. We'd been so careful to hide the medical truth that we'd created a perfect facade for an affair. Every secret meeting, every whispered conversation, every hidden document had been about saving her life, not betraying her trust. Promise me something, Melissa said as we finally headed to bed. No more secrets after this, even if you think you're protecting me. We promised, though we all knew there would always be small kindnesses hidden in relationships, little protections that looked like deceptions, but nothing like this. Never again something this big carried for this long. And promise me, she added, that in Paris, after the surgery, we're getting absolutely drunk on good wine and laughing about how I thought you two were having an affair. Deal, Rachel said, hugging her sister. Though technically, Daniel and I have been sleeping together. In the hospital waiting rooms. He snores. The joke was weak, but Melissa laughed anyway. We all did, because what else could we do? We'd navigated suspicion and jealousy, only to arrive at something scarier, but somehow also more manageable because we were facing it together. The morning after our anniversary, Melissa said thoughtfully, will always be the day I accused you of having an affair and found out I had a brain tumor instead. Hell of a plot twist, I agreed, pulling her close. Though I prefer this version where we all go to Paris together rather than the one where I lose you to either cancer or divorce. She kissed me then, for the first time in weeks, without suspicion between us. You're still an idiot for not telling me sooner, she said against my lips. But you're my idiot. And apparently, you're really bad at having affairs since you included my sister in all your secret meetings. Rachel was already pulling up Parisian apartment listings on her phone. We need a 3-bedroom, she said. Close to the clinic, but also near good restaurants. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. And that's how we spent the rest of the night, planning our medical exile like it was an adventure, because in a way, it was. An adventure in survival, in family, in learning that sometimes the worst suspicions hide the deepest loves. 2 weeks later, we boarded the plane to Paris. Melissa wore her medical alert necklace openly now, no longer hidden beneath decorative plating. Rachel had 6 suitcases of comfort items. I had a folder of medical documents and a heart full of hope. The flight attendant asked if we were celebrating something. Our anniversary, Melissa said without missing a beat. 15 years of marriage and just getting started on the adventure. She squeezed my hand, then reached for Rachel's. We were flying toward uncertainty, toward treatment, toward fear, but we were flying together. All secrets revealed, all suspicions cleared. The truth about that morning after our anniversary was that it marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Not the chapter Melissa had feared, betrayal, divorce, loneliness, but something else entirely. A chapter about fighting together, about love that looks like deception when you're trying too hard to protect someone, about sisters who drop everything when it matters most. The tumor would be removed successfully, though the journey would be longer and harder than any of us expected. But that morning, when Melissa asked if I'd been talking to her or her sister, she'd unknowingly started us on a path toward a different kind of truth. A truth about how love sometimes requires keeping secrets until the right moment, about how protecting someone can look exactly like betraying them, about how the conversation in the garage that night had indeed been about love, just not the kind she'd suspected. I'd been talking to Rachel about Melissa, about treatments, about hope, about fear. about everything except what it looked like from the outside. And in the end, that miscommunication had forced us to communicate more honestly than we ever had before. Paris would be beautiful and terrible. The treatment would work, but leave scars. Rachel would meet someone at a cafe near the hospital and stay in France an extra month. Melissa would lose her hair, but gain a perspective on life that changed everything. I would learn that marriage isn't about never having secrets, but about knowing which secrets are worth keeping and for how long. But all of that was still ahead of us. That morning after our anniversary, we only knew that everything had changed and nothing was what it seemed. The answer to her question, "Were you talking to me or my sister?" was both and neither. I'd been talking to Rachel about Melissa, for Melissa, because of Melissa. Every word had been about her, just not in the way she'd imagined. And sometimes, that's what love looks like. A conversation in a garage that sounds like betrayal, but is actually the purest form of devotion. A secret that looks like an affair, but is really a lifeline. A morning that starts with suspicion and ends with a diagnosis that changes everything. We landed in Paris on a Thursday. The apartment was perfect, the clinic was ready, and Dr. Laurent was everything we'd hoped. The surgery would be in 3 days, but that first night, we did what Melissa had requested. We got drunk on good wine and laughed about the misunderstanding. To affairs that aren't affairs, Melissa toasted, raising her glass. To secrets that save lives, Rachel added. To mornings that change everything, I concluded. We clinked glasses in our Parisian apartment, 3 people who'd almost lost each other to miscommunication, but had found something stronger in the truth. If you made it this far, you're a real one. Show some love with a like and subscribe for more content like this.